go. So, when asked to write a bio for multiple Broadway programs, actors and musicians are often encouraged to truncate their experience. They just say, no more than 50 words or whatever it is. And so you just get lists of credits. So the very humble bio that Adam sent us is a native of Indianapolis and graduate of BSU and North Central High School. Adam has performed nationally and internationally in both English and Yiddish. Most recently, he played the rabbi and understudied Tevye and Laser Wolf in the off-Broadway production of Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish. He has a long-standing relationship with the National Yiddish Theater Volksbühne, for whom he recently produced and directed a star-studded online Hanukkah spectacular. On television, Adam has appeared in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Master of None, 30 Rock, The Mysteries of Laura, Adam Sandler's The Cobbler, and HBO's Emmy-winning film The Normal Heart. He is also, is it MAC or MAC? Got it. Award-winning solo performer, and his debut single, which we are going to get to hear later, "Warm as Winter," is available on iTunes and Spotify. That is his very, very brief bio, and of course, you are here because you are going to get to know him even better in this next hour. We are excited to tell you that one of the first things he said to me was that he was a high note. And that he, in fact, grew up at IHC and is going to tell us all about that. But I do believe that my new friend is a mensch in the truest sense of the word. So without further ado, welcome, Adam Shapiro.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here and to see so many wonderful familiar faces, some that I haven't seen in quite a while. It's so, it's great to be back with IHC, if not at IHC right now.
Well, you should know that this is your home team. We take a lot of pride in you and the wonderful work that you are doing. And yes, you're definitely in a room of friends and supporters and loved ones right now. So thank you for taking the time and for your willingness to do this. And I'm excited to dive in with you. I've been starting the series by telling our masterful musicians that hearing your bio read can often be one of the most humbling experiences. Like you just feel like, where am I supposed to look while they talk about this? Um, and and so I like to pause and offer you the opportunity to tell us, how do you define yourself?
Um, Having seen your previous installments of MasterClass, I knew this question was coming, and I was like, oh gosh, if I were to put some kind of label on how I define myself, what would it be? And I really think that the word I would use is that I am an entertainer. Because whether I am acting, singing, on stage, on television, on the big screen, I want to make people feel good. I want to make people feel happy, even if the material is serious or more somber. I want to be able to give them something that's going to make them feel a little bit of joy. Just maybe a little bit better than when they walked in. So I would say, if I had to say one word, I am an entertainer.
And what do you think is like, it's so Jewish to be an entertainer and to want to make people feel a certain way, whether it is to comfort them with music or to entertain somehow. What about, and I know we'll get into how kind of the Jewish piece almost was an unexpected silver lining of all of this success. But on the very base level, what do you think is Jewish about entertainment in general?
Is it that we're all just trying to please our mothers?
I
Or
mean,
please our,
yes.
sing for grandma, dance for grandma, make your mother happy. I don't know if that's part of it. And my mother is on tonight. Hi, Mom. Um, But yeah, I don't know, but I agree with you. There is something. Maybe it's just that the Jewish people over the years have been through so much that we want to that we want to bring joy to people because we know what it's like to go through stuff. I
Right.
don't know. Maybe it makes sense to me, but it just popped into my head. So
Absolutely. Well, and I think, having just watched some of your work, it's an understatement to say that you're bringing joy, because I think what you're also doing is just making people emote, that there are so many times, particularly in Fiddler, where it's not necessarily joy that you're evoking from the audience, but really connecting them with something bigger than themselves. And I think that's one of the gifts theater gives us, is you can just turn off your life for a couple of hours and immerse yourself.
I agree with you, and I think it's even if it's not joyful, it makes you feel. It connects you with your emotions and your feelings, and and we don't always get to do that. And so that in and of itself can bring some joy, some comfort, can trigger memories and sense memories, and it's I mean joy is one of the major senses, and it really can tie in to the other senses, whether it's
Sure.
laughter through tears or any combination.
I love that. I love that. So let's go down memory lane here for a second. But before we do that, I do want to ask you, what advice would you give yourself? So if you were standing right now on the bema at Adam Shapiro's bar mitzvah, right? And you Cantor Rogers going, I was there. But if you could give yourself some advice.
Mm. Ooh, that is a loaded question. I would say the things that you think and feel about yourself are correct. Do not doubt them.
Hmm.
You are someone who knew what you wanted at a very young age, and you are equipped with everything it takes to get there. So do not doubt yourself.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful because I think, being a professional musician of any kind, it requires a sense of willingness to just bare your soul in front of people. And if we don't believe in ourselves, we teach members of the audience not to believe in us,
Mhm.
right? So that's so powerful. And yet, I don't think it's ego that pushes great musicians forward. I think it's conviction. I think it's determination to just keep going. Because for every one role you land, you will tell us about 15 auditions that you booked. Um, yeah,
Oh
amazing.
yeah, no, there's for every show I have done, there are probably a good at least 3 months, sometimes 6 months, sometimes longer of auditions that I didn't get.
Right, right. And that is the piece that I don't know that everyone knows or sees, and that's so important, right? That
Absolutely.
your career is only as good as the last thing, right? That's kind of where we are. So let's talk about IHC and kind of your hometown and your home community. Tell us a little bit about your memories growing up. I know you were in the high notes.
My memories start even before the high notes at IHC. I mean, I like to say, really, I was born into IHC because from my earliest memories, IHC was a part of it. Whether it was sitting on the floor of the rabbi's study while Rabbi John Stein read poems out of a Shel Silverstein book, or sitting in a circle with Cantor Roger teaching us the sing-along song, which is one of the first songs I ever remember learning. And I still love that song. Truly, going to Sunday school every week for, what, 15 years? Is that when you're confirmed?
Yes, and
15
with
years?
I love how you say that. Like with a big smile on your face, you went bouncing into the building on Sunday.
Well, sometimes.
I get it. We all went through Sunday
We
school.
all
I get
have
it.
those mornings we would have rather stayed in bed. But no, from a very early age, I remember thinking of temple as a good place to be, a fun place to be. Going to family services every month with my parents and my grandma Joan, the late great grandma Joan, and going to Purim every year and seeing, you know, Marsha Goldstein and Cantor Janis and everybody on the bima acting out the story, and always arts events and music events. Grandma Joan was big on those, so we went to several. And a lot of this was all even before I became a high note, because that was, Cantor Roger can correct me, first grade? Was first grade the cutoff?
Here's great.
Um, and so, and of course I was chomping at the bit to join them as soon as I could. And yeah, it was always in my mind. I mean, IHC was always a part of my life, and it was always in my mind as a very positive place. And I think that started sort of the pride of being Jewish, and
Sure.
feeling, even before I knew what a belief system was, feeling like I was connected to something and connected to people. And considering that it's years later and I'm seeing so many faces in here that I know and remember, clearly that connection was strong from the get-go.
I love hearing you talk about IHC because I think I can speak on behalf of Rabbi Brett and myself when I say this is, we want nothing more than, God willing, decades down the road, our kids to turn around and say this is what they remember and how they grew up. And what I find so powerful, Adam, is that you shared with me, and everyone should know that Adam and I spoke pre-interview and that he knows where we're going with all of this. But you did share with me also that at a very young age you lost your mom, and that was something that you and your sister and your dad struggled through and had to go through, obviously very publicly, in that the community rallied around you, supported you. I mean, you have memories of Cantor Roger being right there as you're going through this at 7 years old. And I just think that here we are today, and you and I are celebrating our same 22nd birthday many times over at this point. But what I will say is that we have a choice in how we remember things. And I find it so powerful that IHC has this incredibly positive connection for you, and that this is your spiritual home. And through your greatest times, and of course, I mean, I know having a 7-year-old, there's no way you could have understood your worst times. Just knowing that this community was there and always will be there, no matter how many years later you circle back, right?
Absolutely.
I find it really powerful that is how you choose to remember your time in Indy.
Absolutely. I remember back to, those years, some of which were really, really tough, on my family, and losing my biological mother, Linda.
Mhm.
And I remember when Rabbi Stein and Cantor Roger came to the house to talk about the service. It just blew my mind that, like, the rabbi and the cantor are in my house. It's, And but they were so just wonderfully sensitive and supportive about about the whole event. And then, of course, in the days and weeks that followed, people from the community checking in and just making sure everything and make sure that we were all okay. And, then a few years later to turn around and celebrate with us when my father and my adopted mom, Colleen, who's again here tonight, got married at IHC. And, sort of knowing, what we had all gone through just a couple of years ago, to then celebrate that we had found each other and again feel that embrace from the community. So
I
yeah,
love that.
definitely in the best of times and in the worst of times.
Right, right. That your community just becomes this pillar of safety that you can stand on, right? And I would argue that if we are doing it well, then you feel secure enough to spread your wings, to move to Manhattan, to take a big leap, knowing that of course your parents are there, and underneath them is this pillar that is the community. And
Mhm.
Colleen, I want to give you a huge shout out right now because you should know that you're just an angel. I don't even we haven't even met yet, and Adam and I were gushing. So welcome. It's very nice to have you. So amazing. Now, you were telling me all about Grandma Joan.
Mhm.
So tell us, and I know that Barb Levy was her best friend, so I'm happy to see Barb here. Tell us about Grandma Joan and how she kind of shaped your early experiences.
Oh, Grandma Joan was I was her first grandchild, and I like to say I was the kryptonite that turned mild-mannered Joan Shapiro into the superpower that would forevermore be known as Grandma Joan. Um, and she was a warrior. She was, you know, such a humongous presence in my life from the word go. And yeah, she was someone who, you know, when we would go to temple, she would always be with us. Me sitting next to her, holding her hand, whatever. Um, she was the one a lot of times who brought me to the arts events at IHC and at the JCC also.
Sure.
Um, and she, from a very young age, was probably my biggest, my biggest source of encouragement to sing. She would ask me to sing even if I didn't want to. If there was a group of people, she'd be like, you sing that song I like. And, I'd be like, Grandma, I
Have
don't
you
know.
met my grandson? He sings, right? I love that.
Completely. Um, and, again, she was, such a huge source of encouragement, both in, music and in Judaism. Again, she was very present at IHC and very. I know there's lots of people in this meeting right now who knew her. And yeah, just every Jewish memory, whether it's Passover with the Levies or Rosh Hashanah dinner at her house, which was the only time of year she would make kreplach. Um, she's always very present in those memories, and
So
kind of it's nuts to me to think that she's been gone now for over a decade, but she's still very much up here and in here.
well, and I think you and I, we spoke so much about what it means to keep people alive and to keep, a language alive as you have, and to keep so much. And I just think so much of what you're doing is making Grandma Joan proud, right? Like this is really, you are living out this legacy. of "Have you met my grandson? He can sing," you know. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here because I want to talk for a second at so you were a counterpoint for
I
3 years.
was.
So you heard last week I interviewed Mike Ronick, right?
Yep.
And I will say that Yiddish Fiddler was not the first time you performed in Fiddler.
It was not. It was the third time, as a matter of fact. I was Muttled Taylor in Broadway camp at the JCC when I was 9. And then I was
Okay.
Tevye at North Central my senior year. So I was a 17-year-old bitty bitty bummin'.
I love it. And so at 17, you knew. I mean, I people think I'm crazy when I say this, but when we know we want to do music, 17 is like late. We know by the time we're 7, like this is happening.
Yeah,
So you decide there's no other direction you're going in. You don't go to IU because IU, of course, is a classical school, as we've talked about. It's kind of more an opera foundation. So you go to Ball State
I
in
did.
Muncie. So tell us a little bit about Ball State and what it is to be kind of Jewish at Ball State.
Well, I believe it's a little different now than it was when I was there. Ball State was not necessarily where I had planned to end up. I found myself applying to a lot of the really high profile theater schools, and I didn't get into, the ones that I had, dreamed about. But then I went and auditioned at Ball State, and right away they said, "Come here. We want you." And I was sort of like, okay, I'm going to go where they want me. And this would become a theme throughout my career. So I went to Ball State, and my father hinted at this before I left for college, and I didn't believe him, and he was completely right. That there were not going to be a lot of Jews at Ball State in Muncie, Indiana.
Right.
And he was so right. Are you hear that, Dad? You were right. I'm admitting it. Um, he can hear me.
I have it
He's
recorded.
there.
It's recorded. Yeah.
It's on record. Um, I remember there was a small temple in downtown Muncie, and I went. Maybe it was for a yard site. I don't remember. And afterwards, I went somewhere for dinner, and a friend of mine saw me all dressed up and said, "Oh, you're all dressed up." I said, "Yes, I just went to temple." And she said, "Oh, is that a play?" Or,
Right.
oi, like,
Right. Yeah.
she didn't even know the term temple. And so that was freshman year. And I remember just going, "Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore." And so being Jewish in a small town on a campus where I was one of maybe a dozen at the time was a very new experience for me after growing up and people are always surprised up to, when I tell them I'm from Indianapolis because they don't think of, a lot of Jews living there. And I tell them, no, 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 you would be very surprised at what a large and thriving Jewish community there is in Indianapolis. Muncie, not so much.
Right.
So I became the one that people came to, with questions for religious studies classes.
Love it.
We would go into a room in the library, and they would interview me about Judaism and constantly mispronounce things and mix up events like bar mitzvah and bris.
Very different. Very
Very
different. Yeah.
when I someone asked me, "How old were you when you were bar mitzvahed?" and I said 13, and the horror on his face, and I saw it, and I go, "You're thinking of the wrong thing."
Awesome. Amazing. I love it. Well, and you're studying, so you're doing your degree, kind of eye on the prize. You know that New York City is waiting for you, right?
Right.
So 3 months after graduating, you moved to Astoria,
Hmm.
which is Astoria is in Queens, and it is I think it has become like a total diverse, I mean, as diverse as Manhattan is, but it's just everything. Like every little, you turn one block and you're in the Indian neighborhood, and then you turn again and you're in the Greek neighborhood. And Astoria is just where you go when you
Hmm.
first move to New York. So tell us about those early days, because here's the other piece. You know, you just mentioned what it was to apply to the big schools, right? Or where you think you're going to go. I got three rejection letters on the same morning from
Oh,
three undergraduate classical voice programs that I really thought I was going to go to. And I was talking about this with Mike last week or 2 weeks ago, where we were saying, you know, it because you have to do the audition. So it's not just, they're not just looking at your grades and yes, you get in or you don't. There's a whole process behind it. And it's amazing how, if you've made the decision that this is what you're doing, it doesn't matter. I mean, any rejection letter is just not going to deter you. So you get to Astoria. What were your early impressions of New York City?
I had first of all, I still live in Astoria,
Right.
and I love it. I love my neighborhood. Um, and I remember my mom came with me when I first moved, helped me set up my first apartment, and I remember standing in the middle of the street watching her cab pull away when she went to the airport to fly back to Indianapolis. And there was this enormity that was surrounding me at that moment, going, okay, I've talked about this my whole life. Now I have to do it. Wow. You know, it's very daunting at the start. And even, you know, I had visited New York City about a dozen times before that, including a few by myself, just to make sure that I could sort of exist in the city
Right.
solo. Um, and you know, so I it all took a little getting used to. You know, the idea that some nights were not spent looking for a ticket to whatever the major Broadway hit was right now. Some nights are spent doing your laundry.
Right.
Um, you know, you're not looking for the best restaurant, you're looking for a good bagel. You know, you have to, and you have to get a job. You have to get a job to pay those bills while
Yep.
you're doing your auditions. And even though I had incredibly supportive parents, you know, I wanted to make my own money, and I wanted to, you
Sure.
know, to work. And I did everything from my first job was at a candy store. I was a telemarketer. I was a temp receptionist. I was a theater usher. I'm sure I did freelance graphic design. I mean, I did a lot of other jobs. But I also started auditioning right away. I think I took 2 weeks to get settled, and then I started auditioning. And what I started hearing a lot was, you've got talent, but you're not going to work until you're 40. I would go to these auditions and they would say, you're great for this role in 20 years. And I sort of came to this realization that, you know, at 22, no one was going to cast me as Debbie. You know, you know, no one was going to cast me in the roles that I had played in high school and college because I was young.
Right.
And
Right.
so, you know, everybody was saying, oh, you're not going to work till you're 40. And I sort of said, unacceptable, unacceptable. I may not work conventionally, but I'm going to figure out how to work. And what I discovered was that sort of meant going with the flow and sort of seeing where there was interest,
Right.
and and acknowledging where there wasn't yet. very much sort of like when I applied to college, and Ball State was the one who said, "We want you, come to us." And so for the first couple of years, I ended up doing a few children's theater. I toured across the country with children's theater companies. I spent 6 months as a dog in the show Henry and Mudge. And that's how I got my union card, my equity card, playing a dog. Um, and then I did a workshop of a new show called Jusical, the Chosen Musical, where they needed
Wow.
people to do Jewish humor. And I was like, I think I can handle this.
Typecast if I've ever heard it.
Yeah, no. And I was still auditioning for Broadway and for the bigger shows. And what I told you this story when we were talking the other day. After I'd been in the city for 4 years, we had a very, very close call for what I was sure was going to be my Broadway debut. I was brought in 6 times for the original ensemble of Billy Elliot because they needed guys who were bigger and could, built like miners, like coal miners, but who could tap dance. And I've been tapping for
Wow.
a while. And I was going through all those callbacks, dancing my tuchus off, and singing and mastering the Geordie dialect, the Yorkshire dialect,
Right.
and and then after 6 callbacks, the answer was no, and it almost killed me. It almost killed me, and this was when my career drifted somewhere else unexpectedly, because I was going to auditions and sort of blowing it because at this point I was like, well, what's the what does it matter? I can do the
Right.
best job, I'm still not going to get these jobs. And I said, if I'm going to get out of this, if I'm going to get myself out of this, I've got to find something new. I've got to find something where I'm going to have to focus. And as it so happened, right around that time, I saw an audition for the National Yiddish Theater Volksbühne, which at the time I could not even pronounce the word Volksbühne. But I looked at the breakdown of the list of roles, and I saw one, and I said I could probably play that. I don't speak Yiddish at all. I beyond the occasional oi or a couple of the phrases you don't hear in polite company. Um, but honestly, I really thought to myself, this is Jewish, and
Right.
you are Jewish. So even if you don't know this right now, it's in there somewhere. And you never know unless you try. And so I was able to get the materials in advance. I spent 2 days just drilling, drilling, drilling. And I went in and I stood in front of Muttel Didner and Zalman Lotek, and I read this scene in Yiddish. And I walked out, and it was the first time since I had gotten that rejection from Billy Elliot that that I felt better about things.
Hmm.
I said, I just did
Wow.
an audition in Yiddish.
Yep.
Did pretty. And I didn't end up getting that first play, but I wasn't that discouraged about it. Because I said, again, I like that was my first time and I did not botch that audition. So
Right.
I'm going to keep them in the back of my mind. And turned out the feeling was mutual because a couple of months later, they called my manager and said, we're doing a new musical this winter and we want to see Adam for it. And they brought me back in, and they brought me back in for the lead. and I went through the callbacks, and I only had to do three this time, and I got the part. And by the end of that year, I made my Yiddish theater debut as the title character in Dimple the Fool. And it was, I'd never worked harder on anything before. I'd never been so nervous about anything before.
Right.
But I also felt really welcomed and embraced by this company who didn't so much mind that I was new to the language, but I think they recognized my willingness and my eagerness to learn. And sort of the more it dawned on me that that doing this show was a connection to my history and my heritage and everything I learned at IHC. It started to just really mean more and more to me, and it was, it was, and it opened the door for a lot, and my parents got to see it, and it was the last thing Grandma Joan got to see me do on stage, which I will always be very happy about. Rabbi Stein got to see it because he was still in New York, and that started my journey with Yiddish theater.
I love this because you and I have talked a lot about how you get to New York and you will go wherever the audition process takes you, right? Like if the whatever, if the Asian theater company, like I have friends who auditioned for Chinese opera because it's like you will go where the work is, the same way that we all used to sing in churches when we had voice degrees, right out of school. Like it's what you do. And yet there was this piece of you that came out of this Billy Elliot experience totally devastated. And yet the Yiddish theater felt like a safe space even though you didn't speak the language, right? It was that community, it was that Judaism that, like you said, it's in there. When I first got to my year in Israel, there was a rabbi who would describe Israel in two ways. That there's Israel Lamala, which means to go up, right? The top Israel, and Israel Lamata, and the difficulty of Israel. And I used to take that, and my interpretation is that there is New York Lamala and New York Lamata, right? Like New York Lamala is Dylan's Candy Bar and Times Square, and this is what tourists think New York is.
That's where I worked.
Right? Did you work at Dylan's? Oh,
Dylan's
that's so
Candy Bar.
funny. Of course you did. And New York Lamata is like you have to do your laundry and no one's apartment has a washer and dryer. And it's crazy expensive and God willing there's only one other species of rodent living there. I mean it's just there's a whole piece of it that you think you're like, you're on your way to Broadway or on your way to New York City and you get there and holy moly, it's not easy.
No, and I think you have to have a little bit of that delusion that you're going to hit town and be on Broadway within 6 months.
Right,
Because if
right,
you
right,
don't have at least a little piece of that, you're never going to do it.
right. And you know who just got to New York because their determination's like really cute. Like you're like, oh yeah, yeah,
Right off the bus, middle of
right,
Times Square,
yeah,
NYC,
right.
it's
So
really,
speaking of having to do kind of all kinds of jobs, I think this is a great time to share your first musical example, which
yes.
is from 11 years ago on Holland America Cruise Lines,
hmm
where you
This
quite
this happened
literally were.
this happened right after Gimple. Shortly after Gimple, I was auditioning for things and nothing was coming up, and then suddenly here comes this offer from Holland America to sail away with them for 8 months and be this sort of shticky song and dance man, like song and dance funny guy. And I was sort of like, you know what? Sure, why not?
Right.
It was
Right.
good money too. So this was sort of my big number from the cruise ship, from our Broadway review, and it's called "Don't Monkey with Broadway."
You don't monkey with Broadway. Now there's a song cue if ever I heard one. Please, I'm asking you, please, please. I'm down on my knees. I'm begging you, please. Glorify Sixth Avenue and put bathrooms in the zoo, but please, don't monkey with Broadway. Put big floodlights in the park and put Harlem in the dark, but please, don't monkey with Broadway. Though it's tawdry and plain, it's a lovely old lane filled with landmarks galore and memories. Don't move Branson to Union Square and put Brooklyn anywhere, but please, I beg on my knees, don't monkey with old Broadway. Give the rich the city dump, the West Side to Donald Trump, but please, don't monkey with Broadway. You can fight the village honky-tonks, suppress cheering in the Bronx, but please, don't stop, don't monkey with Broadway. Think what names used to dance on this road of romance. Think what stars used to stroll along here all day. Oy vey, make City Hall a skating rink and push Wall Street in the drink. But please, I beg on my knees, don't monkey with old Broadway. Broadway, I'm begging you, please.
What do you think of when you watch that?
Oh, I think how much I hated that hat. that, that hat was the. Do you know how many times I dropped that hat on stage?
Oh,
I could have killed him for all of that hatography. But it was a fun time. You know, the shows were what a cruise ship shows usually are.
right.
Um, but I found a lot of things on that ship that brought me real joy. You know, I got to do game shows, and I got to, we would play crew versus passenger water volleyball. Oh, let's tie everything together. I became the ship rabbi.
There you go.
I led Friday night services on that ship for 7 months every
Did
week.
you? I love that. You
I
didn't tell me
did.
that.
They had when we got on the ship. I think third night of Hanukkah was when we first came on, and they had a rabbi on the ship. It was a retired rabbi who was on the ship to lead Hanukkah stuff. I imagine in exchange for a free cruise. And I started, going to his stuff, and when he realized I was one of the performers, he sort of made me his unofficial cantor. And when I knew he was leaving, I went to the entertainment director and I said, "You're still going to have Friday night services?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "But who leads them?" And he says, "We're going to have a passenger volunteer." And I said, "I've been on this ship for 3 weeks and I know that's a bad idea." And he said, "Yeah, we've had problems in the past, people preaching their own agenda. There was once a guy who didn't want women to attend on a cruise ship." And I thought about it and I said, "I tell you what, I'm not a real rabbi, I'm not a cantor, but I've been bar mitzvahed and I know Friday night services. So
Right.
what if I took a shot?" And he just looked at me for a second. He goes, "Really? Are you really offering that?" And I was like, "We'll give it a try. And if it doesn't work, then I'll stop." And the next week, and the ship was great. They baked fresh challah every week, and they had kosher wine, and they would bring us a little tray of like gefilte fish and horseradish, little nosh before dinner. They had dates of prayer, which we had at IHC.
I
So
mean,
I,
careful. We're all going to move on to this ship, so be careful.
it
But
was,
keep going, right?
and it was, and I really, that first week I was very nervous, but I did sort of a truncated service,
Sure.
about half an hour long, and the passengers had already seen me in a show, so they recognized me. And they were so tickled that one of the performers was not only Jewish, but leading services. And I did it every week for 7 months.
Let me ask you this because and this is just something I just thought of. So go with me here for a second.
Okay.
Um, as a performer, and particularly when you're doing, hat choreography, don't monkey with Broadway and stuff like that, so much of you is putting on a show, putting on a mask, putting on, like, in that moment, I would never know about the depth of despair when you get the call from Billy Elliot. You know what I mean? And so my question is, do you ever find it, like, do you ever find that your worlds collide, or that your kind of persona on stage bleeds into your offstage life, or do you think it's a hat that you can easily hang at the door?
It definitely happens. It depends on it depends on the show. It depends on what I'm doing. Don't monkey with Broadway, not necessarily.
Right, right,
Although, when I would be out and about on the ship, I was very aware that I was sort of an ambassador of the ship. Um, so there was a little bit of that, you know,
right,
um, and, and then with other roles, like with Pimple, for example, who was this, dear, sweet, and completely gullible character. um, people would take advantage of that, and people would make fun of him and taunt him and play pranks on him, and I dealt with a little bit of bullying as a kid, so that was sort of that was brought to the surface with that role. I think I look for things in each role that I can identify with, because that's how you make it real. That's how you make it human. Um, we had even when I was playing the dog, we had a wonderful dog for 14 years. And, I remember how much I loved her and what she loved to do. And, so then I tried to bring a little bit of that love for her. And so, yeah, there's, there are some actors who like tend to get lost in whatever they're doing on stage, and they
right.
have to live it on stage and off stage. I don't go that far, but certainly there are often parallels
Sure.
with the shows that I'm doing at the time, and how I'm responding to it off stage.
Let's talk about the one man Broadway show that, so you do a ton of hilariously entertaining, awesome YouTube videos. I mean, you're putting all of this together yourself. And so, right before Yiddish Fiddler, right, in 2018, you actually did this whole one man show.
I did. I started my one man Broadway series in 2015, if I remember correctly. Um, and I was getting into video making. I was very interested in green screen editing, and I was learning more about it. And it suddenly, struck me that with doing that, I could create these production numbers all by myself, where I played all the characters. And so I started doing them, and there was, for at least a year, I was doing one a month. I committed to doing one a month. Um, and I should also mention, by this time, I had auditioned for basically every production of Fiddler on the Roof that was being done anywhere at any time, and I had yet to be cast professionally. You know, and I always said, I am not going to quibble about the role. There are so many male roles in Fiddler. I will play whatever. But for whatever reason, well, I think I know the reason now, because there was a certain fiddler that was supposed to be my first. But so yeah, in spring of 2018, I said, you know what? I want to do some one man fiddler, and one of my favorite numbers in Fiddler has always been The Dream. And even though I love Tevye, I love Laser Wolf, I love all of them, I've always kind of wanted to play Frumacera.
I love it.
So I said, hey, if I do this, I can play them all. So yes, in early 2018, I did the Fiddler Dream by myself.
Take us there, Adam.
All right,
Do it.
here we go. The full number is on YouTube, but it's long, so we're gonna watch a cut of it tonight. Oh, one second.
It's the butcher's wife come from beyond the grave. It's the butcher's dear darling departed wife. Frumacera, 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 Tevye. What is this about your daughter marrying my husband? Yes, her husband. Would you do this to your friend and neighbor Frumacera? Frumacera. Have you no consideration for a woman's feelings? Woman's feelings. Handing over my belongings to a total stranger. Total stranger. How can you allow this? How could you let your daughter take my place, live in my house, carry my keys, and wear my clothes? Pearls. How could you allow your daughter to take her place? Pearl. House, keys, clothes, how? Such a learned man as Tevye wouldn't let it happen. Let it happen. Tell me that it isn't true, and then I wouldn't worry. Wouldn't worry. Say you didn't give your blessing to your daughter's marriage. Daughter's marriage. Let me tell you what would follow such a fatal wedding. Fatal wedding. Shh. If Cycle marries Laser Wolf, I pity them both. She'll live with him 3 weeks. And when 3 weeks are up, I'll come to her by night. I'll take her by the throat. And this will give your title, that'll give your title, this'll give your title. Here's my wedding present. If she marries Laser Wolf.
That's epic. Like, can we just say, like, first of all, this is long before you knew that you would be locked down for a year and be your only castmate, right? So that is awesome. Awesome. What do you think of when you watch this kind
Oh,
of
I just think you are nuts. You are a goofball. What are you thinking?
But you have to be, right? You have to be, like, in the best way. So,
Absolutely.
Fiddler happens. Fiddler happens in an amazing way. It was supposed to be a 3-month run or a 2-month run?
Two.
2-month run.
2-month run.
2 years later.
It's pretty incredible. It's, again, I'd been trying to do Fiddler for my entire career. Meanwhile, I had discovered this world of Yiddish theater and really come to love it. By this time, I had done 4 shows in Yiddish. And I had done concerts, I had done readings, I really, the Folksbiene and I had developed this really great working relationship. And then April of 2018, I get a call from my friend Muttel Didner, the associate artistic director, and he says, "So here's the deal. We're doing Fiddler in Yiddish." And of course, instantly I was just like, "Say what?" It. I said, "Whatever you want, whatever you want, I'm in." Like, and as the next few weeks went on, I learned a few more things. Like I learned that it was being directed by the legendary Joel Grey, whose birthday is today. Um, and it was just all these things where, as if I needed to want this more. But the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh my God, I have to be in this. If I'm not in this, what am I doing? And they brought me in to do a table read of the script so they could hear the translation. And they had me read Laser Wolf, and that was the day I met Joel. And by the end of it, we were just all sitting there in stone cold silence, tears streaming down our faces. This show that is so familiar to all of us, suddenly in the language that these people would have spoken, was so. And we were right. The Museum of Jewish Heritage is right across the water from Ellis Island and
Right.
the Statue of Liberty. And it just was all so major. And again, like everything was just enforcing, I have to be in this show. And again, this was when it was a 2-month run. We were not making a ton of money. But I said, no, I need this experience. And blessedly, I got the job. Um, and we just started. And from the beginning, and there were a lot of people in the show who, like me with Gimple, had never spoken Yiddish before. We're starting from scratch. We only had about 4 weeks to rehearse. And but everyone who was in it, and I think this is a big part of why we were so successful at it. We were not there for a big break of any kind.
Right.
We were there
Right.
because this was a project that was amazing. We were there, yes, we were there because we wanted to work with Joel Grey, but we wanted to have this experience of doing a show that, again, is so beloved and so familiar in a way that makes it suddenly strikingly unfamiliar and yet more familiar. It's
Right.
very meta. Um, and we 4 weeks of absolutely, thank you, Rabbi Brett. And 4 weeks of just rehearse. Um, and then opening first preview July 4th, 2018. We had a barbecue afterwards, and it hit me as we were standing backstage getting ready to come in for tradition. It suddenly hit me that like we were gonna be measured next to every other production of Fiddler that these people had seen, and they'd seen a lot.
Right.
And luckily, I didn't have much time to think about that because the next thing I know, tradition. Um, so we do the first number. We, no train wrecks, no collisions. We finish it. We're all off stage. Tevye says the last line, bum, 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 bum. And the geschrei, the shout that came from that audience stopped us all in our tracks. We all, we were rushing to do the scene change or to go back to the dressing room. I've been in shows where you don't get that at the end, where like you don't get that for the bows. And suddenly after the opening number, I'd never heard anything like it. And we all just sort of stopped and looked at each other. And it was sort of the moment where we sort of all clicked that we have something special here. We have something very special. Um,
Awesome.
and from then on, it was a rolling stone. It was, suddenly 2 months became 4 months, 4 months became 6. Suddenly, we're told we were gonna record a cast album. Suddenly we have new producers coming in who say, we're going to find you an off-Broadway theater uptown where we're with a larger house. Um, and again, nobody knew how long that was going to last. It was, we opened we reopened at Stage 42 in February of 19. Um, at the time they were selling tickets through June. So we were like, okay, we'll run through June, and then it was Labor Day, and then it was, Thanksgiving, and then, and it just kept going. And I like to say that it was a very Dianu experience,
Right.
because
Right.
because even if it had only been that first 2 months,
Right.
it would have been enough. But the fact that we got, and then we won the Drama Desk and the Outer Critics Circle, and it just constantly, raining nachas and blessings on this show. And of course, for me, the biggest, part of it was that we ran long enough that so many people got to see it. And so many people from my life got to see it. So many people who are on this Zoom right now got to see it. And of course, not least, the confirmation class got to come.
Right.
Rabbi Brett brought the confirmation class, um, and then I led a Q&A afterwards with some of our cast, and that was incredible. That was it made me feel supremely old, but it happens. Um, no, because uh, again, as I said at the very beginning, the whole goal is to bring joy and to make people feel things, and to, you know, and so to be able to give back to IHC in that way was just a such a wonderful thing for me. And I still have the pictures of that we took on stage with everybody, and there's a great picture of me and Rabbi Brett with the Torah backdrop behind us. And yeah, it was this unexpected, but as I've come to realize, very bashert
Right.
experience.
Right.
If you're not familiar, the Yiddish word bashert is meant to be.
Well, and it's hearing you talk about how humbling it is for you to be able to be on that stage and bring the musical you were waiting your whole life to bring to life and do it in Yiddish and do it in such a big way. What is not lost on me and the rest of us is what an instrument you have become in just carrying on this tradition and this language and our story, right? That you are tasked with bringing it to life, because so many of the people in that audience are not Jews. So many of the people in that audience have never had a bubby or somebody, where they don't have family members who say oi naturally. And I just think it's incredible that you found a higher Broadway calling, and I don't think it's an accident. I
I
think
don't
that
either.
it's very much Bashert. I feel like I could talk to you for 8 more hours. I'm going to move us along because I have a
Please.
couple more things I want to get to. One is I'm going to ask you the big question of what next, specifically with this idea in mind, and I'll get you to share your final example with us.
Mhm.
But none of us could have predicted what happened with the world. One of the first thoughts I had was about whomever was supposed to open at the beginning of April, you know, and how long that cast had been working on that. And it just, I mean, it just rips your heart into pieces. Luckily, you enjoyed a closing night before any of this happened. And throughout this series, you know, in all the interviews I've done, we've talked about how musicians come back even stronger, even more determined, with even more conviction, to do more with our voices than we have in decades.
Yeah.
And I know that is true of you as well. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what is next, and specifically the single that you're going to share with us.
Well, it's been a hell of a year. It's you know, the live entertainment arena. You know, I don't want to quantify, but I would say it's among the hardest hit
Yeah.
by the pandemic, and will also be the slowest to come back, unfortunately. It will be back, but it's not going to be terribly quick. So, you know, I have put those video skills to good use. I did a whole series of specials over the last year with my roommate, Janice Hall. We called them Still Alive from Shapiro Hall. That's what we call our apartment. And, you know, the other thing is, while I was doing Fiddler, which was such a grueling schedule, a demanding schedule, I remember thinking to myself, gosh, I wish I had a little time to work on some other projects. I didn't mean this long.
Right. I was going to say, stop asking for time.
I know, I need to be more specific.
Right.
But one of the things that I really wanted to work on is, over the last 2 years, I've been working on recording my first album. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and you know, I went through iterations upon iterations of what kind of music I wanted to do, what I wanted the album to be, before finally connecting with the right people to make it happen. And thrilled to say that what I know is next is that album will be released at the end of the summer. And I'm very
Yay, mazel
excited.
tov.
Thank you. And I'll be doing, you know, a release show. Um, all songs by New York songwriters that I have worked with, who either haven't ever been recorded or only done demo work. It's, I guess technically it's considered an EP, an extended playlist, which is
Right.
slightly shorter than a full album. These are terms I'm just learning. But the plan is for it to be released around Labor Day. And one of the things that I did, that I was able to do during Fiddler, was to record my first song for the album, which I released as a single, which we then made a video for. And that's the last video that I have to share.
Wonderful.
And it's called Warm as Winter. I could be so slick and be like, warm as winter. Click.
Yeah, no, that's not how
I
this
need
works.
a second.
Like an awkward, warm as winter. You're muted. Right.
Okay, here we go.
I know a secret about keeping warm. Head for the mountains and a winter storm. Just bring that someone that you love, and soon the weather feels like what you're dreaming of. You can be warm as winter, cool as July, sunshine wet, thunderstorm dry. Love can make the seasons transform till it's warm as winter. once was stranded, trapped in the gale. I had wrapped myself in winter's veil. I looked no further than cloud gray skies, till you made me see my world again with different eyes. And now I'm warm as winter, cool as July, snowflake wet, teardrop dry. Love worked wonders, true to form. Now I'm warm, so warm. So don't despair when the wind blows. Just let the sun break through, and you'll be warm as winter, cool as July, in the clouds and the waterfall dry. Let love change you, let it perform. You'll feel free, light as rain, soft as snow, and oh so warm, warm as winter. Love's warm as winter.
Who can belt with a straight tone that high? Like, who are you? I love it. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Everyone's noticing the video. I'm noticing the lack of vibrato, and I'm sitting here going, how? Okay,
Taken a lot of work.
gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. We didn't even begin to talk about all the amazing work you have done for the LGBTQ community, and so much. There's so much more to talk about, but I am going to close with our lightning round, which I have promised people and I promised you. So tell me, aside from Fiddler, what is your all-time favorite musical?
My all-time favorite musical is Ragtime. I fell in love with it when I first heard it. I followed it from its creation. I've done it twice. I want to do it 50 more times. Hands down, Ragtime.
And a question that we hope doesn't get you in trouble one day. But if there was a musical that you'd be okay to just not see again, although you would welcome the opportunity to be in the cast, maybe one that you've seen too many times.
Um, I am not a fan of Camelot. I'm sorry, I
Camelot. Okay.
never have been.
Okay.
I think it's
Yep.
long and too slow. I could live without seeing Camelot.
This is how I feel about 75% of Phantom of the Opera. I'm like, just make it stop. Think
Fair.
of me and then move along.
Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
Oh, I'm still gonna say pizza. I'm a pizza
York pizza.
guy. I do not discriminate. I like New York and Chicago. I like both. I do not discriminate. And matzo ball soup is a close second.
What do you miss most about Indy?
Oh, well, aside from the people, which is a given. What do I miss most about Indy? Shapiro's Deli.
Yes.
No relation. No relation. But
Right. I was waiting for Rabbi Brett to chime in. You got an applause right there. That is, there are a few people on earth who love deli as much as Rabbi Brett.
I
will
love
say.
good deli, and
So, I love that.
and of
Love
course
that.
we grew up when Shapiro's was on was still on the north side, and I miss that.
I love that. Tell me the coolest place you've ever traveled.
Oh, coolest place I've ever traveled. I would say it is a tie between Israel, and Machu Picchu.
Ooh,
I was
yes.
on the ship. I got to take a little 3-day trip with a bunch of the crew, uh, in starting in Lima, Peru, and we went to Cuzco, and then we went to Machu Picchu, and that was incredible.
See, and if it were not for the hat, Adam, right? And if what is one stage that you have not yet performed on but can't wait to?
Oh, well, I would have to say a Broadway stage. I mean, I've set foot on them at this point for one nighters. Fiddler was still technically off Broadway, but no, I would love to. I mean, I want to play Broadway. I would love to play Carnegie Hall.
Beautiful.
I played Lincoln Center, and that was incredible. Uh, so those are probably the two.
And a TV show you'd love to be on?
Oh,
Gosh, we didn't even get to talk about all your work in TV.
a TV show. You know what I'm going to say? One that hasn't been written yet. One that will be written with a vehicle for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And in the meantime, we were talking about how you're not truly a New York actor until you've been on SVU, right? Because that's where everybody's career really takes
I
off.
just had an audition for it. I don't think I got it, but I was like, come
Oh my God.
on.
I'm a super fan. So like I'll tell you if you got it before you'll get the call. You know? Like I'll be on some random website. I love this. Tell us what you are most excited for in the future.
Oh, I'm excited to just see things come back more and more. I'm excited to travel. I'm planning a trip next year to celebrate a big birthday. We don't have to say the number. I'll just say a big birthday.
Yeah.
And I'm planning to go to Italy, and I've never been to Italy before. I want to get back to work. I want to, get back in a room with people. I want to come back to Indianapolis to visit. Um, I'm ready. I'm just excited to move forward after feeling like we've all been standing still for a year.
Right.
I'm
Right.
just feeling I'm very excited to move forward.
Oh, well, we are so excited to watch your every move. You should know that you take all of us with you when that opening night happens again, because it will. And just please promise me that that you will also come to IHC and be brought in as a guest performer. We would love nothing more
Anytime.
than to have you. Awesome.
Anytime.
Awesome, awesome. Well, this, believe it or not, wraps up our masterclass series. Adam Shapiro, such a pleasure to get to know you. I love that we're friends now and have, we haven't even had a chance to play New York geography, which is like Jewish geography times 10. So we have to do that.
Absolutely.
But may this be the first of many times we get to hang out. Thank you all for coming. And because you all know Adam, I'm going to let you go ahead and unmute yourselves if you want to say hi. And thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. It's been
Thank
wonderful.